somehow this has to be national, and it has to reach all regions, and it has to reach all Canadians.
Quels sont les droits du citoyen canadien?
The stories that people bring to the country as immigrants shapes us as a nation as well.
It's equally important to bring to the table the very dark history of institutionalization, of violence, of exclusion.
There's so much, there's just racism everywhere, and it needs to be addressed and it needs to be looked at.
I happen to believe that we do have a responsibility to the rest of the world.
Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire au Canada de devenir meilleure nation tous ensemble?
Canada already exists with a number of unique relationship rights amongst its people. If we don't engage in dialogue amongst ourselves and between ourselves about these rights, we will never truly understand the grandeur of Canada and what it really offers.
We as Indigenous peoples in this place called Canada have been put into a place by a foreign system that has enforced its laws, have enforced its institutions on our people without our consent.
I'm not going anywhere. This is my country. This is my province. This is my land. And so I have a right that I have been trying to exercise over my entire life.
Pourquoi est-ce qu'on garde un poison comme tel dans le tissu social canadien?
La déportation des Acadiens qui s'est passée en 1755. Cette déportation-là a carrément pris les familles qui étaient implantées depuis plusieurs décennies sur des terrains et qui les ont exportées ailleurs.
Les francophones, ça fait pas 2, 3, 4, 5 générations, 8 générations qui sont au Canada. Les francophones sont là avant même la Constitution du Canada. Donc le français et l'anglais sont les deux langues à la base du Canada. Et si je viens vivre au Canada, c'est les deux populations qui m'accueillent, plus les Autochtones.
People of African descent have been here as long as either one of those two other parties. We have been here as long as. We have helped build this country, from the road systems to the highway systems to the railroad systems to the port systems. People of African descent built those.
Our grandfather came here in 1906. And then he paid a head tax of $50. Our father he brought over, and he came over in 1916, where he had paid a head tax of $500, which was quite a considerable amount of money at the time.
Many peoples participated in creating the Canadian dream.
My grandparents had a big berry farm. It's confiscated. They lost everything.
The railroad workers, what's happened to Japanese Canadians, what happened with the Sikh workers in British Columbia, a two-tiered immigration status. And that's playing out itself again with these workers.
When you have citizenship, you are a member, if you will, of a family if they take it away. You have no right of judicial review to challenge the government. You have no right of a land, a home, protection, police protection, nothing.
Until and unless you belong to some place, you cannot enjoy. You cannot feel delighted. The flame which is burning in you, okay, that flame, I call that flame of belonging.
The mind's like a parachute, functions best when open, and when it comes to transgendered people, it's a big stretch for a lot of people.
They made my grandmother and I sit in the middle of the floor in our cabin, and they made us sit there until my grandfather came home. And I can't tell you how many hours that was, but that's how we were treated.
Our school systems are failing us, and so those kids are ending up incarcerated. They're ending up in mental health facilities.
There is not one human rights act in the entire country that talks about housing as a human right, so we wanted it here.
If you're inside the womb of a mother, you're technically, according to Canadian law, it's sort of up in the air whether or not you're a person.
It turns out that in Alberta,
you could be fired and you could be evicted because you were gay and there was nothing in human rights legislation to protect you.
We all do need a real education. The discrimination is bad for all time.
Everyone has the right to be treated the same way as everyone else.
Everyone has the right to be happy and have love in their family.
Everyone has the right to be respected.
Everyone has the right not to be slaves.
Everyone has the right to dream.
Everyone has the right to live.
Everybody has the right to explore.
Everyone has the right to be free.
Everyone has the right to make new friends.
When I was 7 years old, I wanted to be a girl guide so bad. And I said, Mom, I want to be a girl guide. And I couldn't be a girl guide because my parents couldn't afford the uniform. And I remember going over, waiting for the girls to get out of their meeting and looking in the window of where they were at church, where they were meeting, and feeling, and this stays with you, this feeling of being on the outside, looking in.
They are looked upon as individuals who are not very pleasant to have around, and so they're sort of put away in a corner somewhere.
Quand je suis arrivée comme lesbienne, moi, dans les années 60, je cherchais les livres, je cherchais les films sur les lesbiennes. Elles n'existaient pas.
En tant que deux hommes dans une société, on doit constamment tailler sa place en tant que parent. On surprend toujours, puis je pense qu'on surprendra toujours.
Il y a une peur qui existe, et je pense que si cette peur-là est dissipée, les gens commenceront facilement à s'intégrer. Mais l'accueil ou l'intégration, ce n'est pas simplement le fait de sourire. Ça, le sourire, ça ne paye pas la facture.
When I'm turned away from an establishment or denied entrance, it does tear a little bit of your soul away, and it really doesn't necessarily grow back.
So for a long time, I largely avoided situations and social settings where I might want to dance. I mean, I might have gone to them, but I would stay away from something that I loved, which was dance.
What you want is for everybody to feel a sense of their knowledge and their choices and their space. And so, I mean, it's good for women to be able to then do that with anything in their lives, right? It gives them more confidence to address anything.
There's always a bit of a war between people who see value in people by virtue of what they're able to do, what they're able to produce, how they're able to relate and communicate. The other part of you, which puts value on just being or existing, is sometimes not winning the day.
People need to be reassured that who they are matters, that they are matters, and that whatever they have to go through, that they're treated as human beings.
It's hard to describe the life and filth, the dirt and lice. People were taken out, blindfolded, made to kneel and shot in the neck. And we had to bury them. We had to, and always being aware that it could happen to you tomorrow.
There was no one to turn to, you know. She was just another drunken Indian, and nobody. But she She only went out occasionally. And like I said, when they found her body and they did an autopsy, there was no alcohol in her blood.
Ashley was left on the floor to choke to death. Ashley had done hundreds of attempts. Ashley was scarred from the wrists up to the elbows, just big cries for help, and Ashley was not helped.
They told me, you know, your name is nobody, you have no family, you're an orphan, you're here, we can do with you what we wish.
They threw the body, pile of bodies, and I ran after them, and I sat there and I cried. And a friend of my mother's came and she took me away from there.
You really feel like the world has ended, but at the same time, with all the pain you have inside, you have to learn to keep going, to keep learning, like life continues, you know. I think that's the worst part.
I hated everybody. I mean, the anger I had was just, I don't know how to describe it. Anybody that wasn't Native, I hated.
We had to relearn how to be human, how to have normal emotions. We were written off. The expert believed that we saw too much and we would never rehabilitate. The experts had it wrong. The human spirit is so amazing that you can overcome great obstacles.
Le peuple acadien a décidé de vivre. Ils n'ont pas accepté cette déportation, ils n'ont pas accepté le génocide. Et la seule façon de lutter contre un génocide, c'est de rester debout, c'est de rester vivant.
The last thing in the world my father would have wanted me to be would be like the perpetrators, like the criminals who committed the genocide, because they had hatred as their foundation.
The real challenge for all of us as human beings is to go inward to find and feel that spirit that is inside of it. That has always been the way of the elders. They don't take that responsibility away from you to decide what you want to be and who you want to be, because that is all inside of you. But do you have the courage to live that spirit of who you are?
It was one coach, one woman, that created a space that was safe to be who I was. She asked me at the end of a set, how did that feel for you? And I was like, you want my input? You know, it was so astonishing. And it was that subtle shift of opening the door to hear how I felt.
What can we do to help people to see other people as they really are?
Human rights fundamentally are the recognition that we are not others. That although we are different, we have our humanity in common. And every time you tell a story and it's heard, you reinforce that fact, that we have something in common, something really fundamental, and we can prove it every time we create this magic space between us.
Despite our differences, the two most common issues are around concern for youth and education of youth.
We need to take that blindfold off of past generations, like my mother and father, who have their old customs, but need to come into the transition, like you guys were saying, of accepting others now.
They met survivors, they sat down, they met these people. It was humanized. All of a sudden they realized that there was a person, that there's a Jewish community that does certain things, and as I said, after that experience, these children really, really changed.
If we don't look things squarely in the eye, then we certainly can't change anything.
On pourrait faire participer, comme on disait tout à l'heure, des artistes, des musiciens, des poètes, etc., que se mobilisent pour ces musées-là.
I want children to come in and go, I can be that. And that, to me, would be the most important impact this museum can have.